So, I posted a video about how I've been reading to reach my language goals. If you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. But I wanted to talk about the difference between extensive and intensive reading when it comes to language learning. I think that both methods are really useful for language learners, but in completely different ways. So, firstly, let's talk about what they are. Intensive reading is what you're used to if you went to school and you had to read books for school. This is when it involves a lot of annotating. It involves paying attention to the small details and really analyzing everything that's going on in the book. And for language learning, it also means that you are taking note of new vocabulary when they come up. That means you're going to stop. You're either going to highlight or underline it or make note of the fact that, okay, this is a new word, or you're going to stop right there, check your dictionary, find out what it means, okay, and keep going. Any kind of way that you identify with intensive reading. This also means that as a language learner, you would be looking for new grammar points, looking for new ways to structure a sentence, looking for new ways to describe something, all of these different things. And, it's a lot of work. That's why it's intensive. I know a lot of people, they use highlighters, you have Post-it notes, you have pens and pencils and a lot of different things, especially if you have ebooks. It's a lot of fun because you can do all of it digitally. Ugh. And then on the other hand, we have extensive reading, which is a lot more lax. It just means that you are here to enjoy the story. You understand that you won't understand every single thing, but as long as the plot is still there, you can keep track of the characters, everything is fine. You're not going to stop. You're kind of just breezing through it and just enjoying the book for what it is. And both of these methods are really great. As you can see, intensive reading is going to give you a lot more structure. So if you're someone that wants a lot of structure, if you're someone that is looking to build on your vocabulary or build on how you're describing things or how you are speaking and talking about situations, definitely go towards intensive reading. That will help you a lot because you're seeing native content, you're seeing all of the different ways that you can formulate a sentence in ways that you wouldn't have done before, something that, you probably didn't learn or you didn't understand quite well. If you're learning one of the many languages that uses the subjunctive the subjunctive mood, it's really great when you're reading a book and you can make note of every time they use it and you go, okay, wait, okay, that was a good moment to use it. Now I kind of understand that I can try to formulate that sentence that way and it'll work in that sense. Also, if you're, building vocabulary, you see a new word, it's something that you haven't seen or something that, might be useful, or it's a different word for something you already knew, all of these different things, and you want to be able to use it or have it in your repertoire, make note of it. Now you have a vocab list to study from. It's so many benefits to intensive reading, and if you like it, definitely do it. Extensive reading is really awesome because this is how you start to train your brain to think in the language. The more that you read extensively, the easier it's going to become to read without translating. And once you start doing this, it makes it easier for you to speak and to understand the language without translating in your head all the time. So I definitely love extensive reading because I am someone that I used to love books, but when I started going to school and we started focusing in on this intensive reading situation, it made me hate reading. But now that I'm out of school, I've been able to read more and I've been doing it extensively, and it's giving me the joy that I wanted and that I always had before schooling took over. So when I'm reading my books, I am one of those people that can visualize what I'm reading. So for me, it's like playing a movie. And there's going to be moments where there's really niche vocabulary that I don't know. But for the most part, I don't care. So I'm someone with my language learning, especially with where I am now in the languages that I'm reading in, if I don't see me using this vocabulary, it's not really worth me taking the time out to study. But there are times where if I see something, if I see a word being used more and more, okay, I might pause or look up what it means, unless it was context clues. For the most part, I rely on context clues when I'm reading, and it kind of just it flows all into it. But if I see a word that's coming up a lot, either I rely on context clues and slowly it kind of just goes into my mind just like that, or I'll stop and figure out what it means, and now I'm like, okay, I can continue reading because it seemed important, at least for this story. Even if it's not important for me, it's important for this story. So an example of that is I was reading the book La Perra, and this is, as you can guess, it's about dogs. And there was a part of the book where they were describing the parts of a dog, and because there was something going on with the dog and one of the owners or something, and I don't want to spoil the book or anything, but there was something going on with the owner and the dog, and because of this, they were describing the different parts of a dog. Me personally, I am never going to use I'm never going to care to talk about a dog's tail or not. That didn't seem important to me. In the moment, I did, kind of want to make sure I kind of understood what exactly was going on. So that was a moment where I looked up a few words, just because there were so many words in one small thing that were not, in my vocabulary, because I don't talk about dogs enough. And, I didn't hold on to them. I didn't write them down. I kind of just looked at it and was like, okay, now I understand what that paragraph was about. But because I had did that, and later on some of those words repeated themselves, and I kind of had an idea that, okay, that's a part of the dog, and I didn't pay attention to what part of the dog necessarily. I used context clues for that part, but I didn't memorize that vocabulary. When I went into reading my other book, I recognized one of the words being used in a different context. So this word was the word for the dog's tail, cola. And when I was reading this other word, they talked about a girl putting her hair into a ponytail, and they used cola again. And when I read that, I was like, wait, I know this word. This was the part of the dog, so obviously it means tail if they're using it for ponytail now. And now not only is cola in my brain without ever having to write it down, without ever using flashcards, memorizing anything, the fact that I saw it again in a different context, now I know it, especially since this context is something that resonates more with me because I'm a girl and I put my hair in a ponytail all the time. So it was really interesting. So that's how I personally do it. I also talked about how when you're intensively reading, you have you focus in on grammar and things like that. Me personally, if I'm reading extensively, as I usually am, I do make mental notes of different things, I will say, okay, that was a cool way of how they structured that sentence, that would be a cool thing to know, but I'm not writing it down, because I think that the moment I start stopping and writing, for one, it's going to slow down my reading. For two, it makes me focus more on the words and all of the nitty-gritty, that I don't get to experience the book the way that I want to. It stops the movie that's in my brain while I'm reading. I don't want it to stop, because it's like having commercials, and I don't like commercials. I'm a Netflix girl. So that is what I do. I am an extensive reader. I love extensive reading. I think it's also great because it helps you with the fluidity of how you're understanding the language as well. So as far as other language learners, another thing that I would love to say, which is kind of unrelated, but when it comes to reading in a language, like I said, reading in a language is going to help you to think in the language. If you're working on your pronunciation, your cadence, and your speaking skills in a language, I always recommend to people to read out loud. You're reading out loud from native content, so you know that the phrases are more so correct. which means that it'll be really useful for you to practice it, and it kind of becomes muscle memory, and you get to practice putting different sounds together in different ways in the language. Okay, so that's all I have for today about extensive versus intensive reading when it comes to language learning. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can comment, you can message me on Instagram or anything. If this video wasn't clear, if I wasn't clear about anything specifically or just in general, or if you just need more ideas of how to do either method, please let me know. And if I, hear a lot, I might make another video and kind of talk about the different levels of like what level of a reader you are, or what level you are in your language learning, that what would be useful and how to get started with reading in your target language, especially from the beginning stages all the way up. But yes, let me know. As always, just let me know whatever you guys want. Bye.